Welcome to Whiskey One, the channel for the novice, the curious, and the connoisseur. So today we're going to taste the Michter's Single Barrel Rye. It's got a lot of interesting history, and it's a good entry-level whiskey. So stick around. Michter's Rye, made by the Michter's Distillery. Now before I dive into Michter's, it's important for me to sort of share this history behind the bottle, the brand, and then we're going to dive into our nosings, tastings, and check this out together. I want to mention you guys should follow us and subscribe to the channel. We're on Instagram and Facebook at Whiskey One Channel, so check us out there for our latest postings and subscribe. If you do, make sure to hit that bell notification so you're alerted next time we drop our next video. So Michter's whiskey, you've probably heard of it. I'm sure that you've seen it on the shelf multiple times, but you probably didn't know the rich history behind it. Now, it wasn't originally called Michter's. The Michter's Distillery was actually founded by a man named John Shank, who happened to be a Mennonite farmer that moved to Pennsylvania and started what is supposedly America's first whiskey company. And he sold it as Shank's Whiskey. Then around the mid-1800s, it was purchased by Abraham Baumberger and ran until Prohibition, and he sold it as Baumberger's Whiskey. Now, let's fast forward to the 1950s, where Lou Foreman named this whiskey after his two sons, Michael and Peter, combining the two to make Michter's, and sold it as Michter's Whiskey, up until about 1989 when he had to file bankruptcy and he abandoned the distillery altogether. Here's where Michter's comes in, where it gets revitalized. Now in 1990, a man named Joseph Magliocco and Dick Newman sought to resurrect the distillery and eventually moved it to Louisville, Kentucky, where the distillery now operates. Now they have 3 separate sites that they sell the Michter's whiskey from, and like I said, you've probably heard of the Michter's whiskey, and you've probably also seen this branding US with a red star and a number 1. And that's just to honor the Michter's heritage as being America's first whiskey company. Now I did try to do a little research online just to see if that's actually true, and what I did find is a lot of references to other whiskey brandings and different whiskey companies, and not necessarily the Shank's Whiskey Company. So with that being said, it's time to get a pour and let's go over this together. So we're going to have ourselves a little pour and dive into this nose. So one of the things that jumps out right away on this pour is intense creamy vanilla, which is kind of surprising for a rye. And before I even get started, I just want to do a quick shout out to Terry Cost, who's been an avid supporter of the channel, leaving a lot of comments and feedback for us. So we really appreciate that. Now on the nose, like I said, vanilla just pours right out of the glass. But it's followed by black tea, ginger. It's spicy, but it's a little bit sweet, nice toasted or warmed honey. And you get the typical notes that you get from other ryes like fresh cut grass, anise. Yep, and going back to it, it is sweet, and I'm getting ripe pears, apricots, dried apricots. But it's perfumey as well as creamy, and it's got just a faint walnut. And I'm talking, imagine that you're at a party, crowd, everybody's there, all the big players, and there's this one person just sitting in the corner all by themselves, and you can barely make them out. That's how this walnut feels. It's just barely there. All right, so let's dive in for a taste. All right, on that taste, the creamy vanilla I got on the nose is ever present. It's probably the dominant player here, but it's followed immediately by black licorice, sweet, and it's just got a little bit of that dry touch, right? And it's got honey, it's spicy, and it's got this lingering pepper right on the tail. I'm gonna take one more sip. So one thing I want to point out about this rye is that it's light. It's not very heavy. It's got a good medium light viscosity. It's not super warming, not initially, but when you start going back to the taste, you do your follow-up, maybe take that third sip, you're going to notice that it gets a little spicier, a little bit more burn right on that tail, and then the finish starts to last a little longer. So let's go in for that third sip. Yep. Like I said earlier, on that third sip, as you keep going back to it, it just gets a little spicier every time. Now, initially that spice isn't so prominent. It's not the big guy just dominating the room. It's not spice heavy. Not initially. But when you start going back to the taste, you keep sipping, that spicy pepper just likes to hang out and linger just a little bit longer on those follow-up tastes. And I gotta say, this is gonna be more of a perfect entry-level whiskey for most of you. And again, you've probably seen this bottle time and time again, and if you're ever curious and wonder if it's too aggressive, it's got enough character, it's not aggressive in any way. And it's got the right amount of character, and it checks all the boxes for a rye. The one thing that sets itself apart for me is that it's very vanilla heavy and creamy, velvety, right on that palate. It's just got a nice little touch of cream. And I think a lot of that just draws from the fact that this was aged in charred American white oak barrels. And I didn't mention before, but this is bottled at 42.4% ABV. So low percentage alcohol proof there, not very high, so it's not meant to attack you, be aggressive in any way. This is just the right bottle for the person that's just curious, just getting started, maybe never even had a rye whiskey before. I would highly recommend this bottle for those. So let's talk score. I gotta give this a 4.25 out of a 5, and if you're curious why, it's just a great entry-level whiskey for those that are curious about rye, maybe never had one, maybe you're just curious as to what a good rye tastes like, and this is a good representation of that. It's creamy, spicy, peppery, checks all those boxes, right? It even has that anise, black licorice note, and just enough oak to let you know it's there. And I gotta say, it doesn't have a huge amount of complexity, but it's got a really great taste and a mouthfeel. And like I said, it's perfect for the entry-level whiskey connoisseur. And let's talk price point. One of the reasons I'm giving this a 4.25 out of a 5 is simply because of the affordability and the accessibility of this. Right now, I'm seeing this all over liquor store shelves. They're on sale at most places too right now, so that kind of lends me to think that maybe they're producing a lot of this right now and it's flooding the market, and you can't find this for between 40, 45 bucks. And I think that's just a really good cost considering you just want to get started, maybe you just want to have a sipper. Hell, this might even be good for a cocktail. So I do recommend it for that part. Now, let's talk about my overall final thoughts. Again, this is a perfect entry-level whiskey. So if you're curious about a rye and you don't want to shell out a lot of money, you just want to get something to get you going and nothing that's really aggressive or in your face, this is going to be the one for you. So again, thank you, Terry Koss, for making a mention and a comment and suggesting that we try this. This has been a nice, solid whiskey. So for all you joining the channel, we thank you for stopping by. And remember, as always, Whiskey One. It's about the one you enjoy. So cheers.